Welcome, everybody, to this commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the Farhoud. My name is David Nathaniel, and I'm the president of the community of Babylonian Iraqi Jews in Montreal. And it's an honor to have all of you join us. We have 26 wonderful organizations that are joining us today, and I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. Oops, sorry. Excuse me. Yes, so we have 26 wonderful organizations that have that are co-sponsoring this event. They're participating. They have promoted the event to their networks, and we're very proud to have this level of participation. We also have not included in this list is the Azrieli Foundation that has also shown support for today's commemoration. So I'd like to thank everybody again for their participation. It means a lot. We have a worldwide audience today from all over the world. We have over 300 people that registered as of about a week ago. And right now we're at around 250 participants. So again, thank you for the turnout. We have, I'll share with you the agenda for today. The whole commemoration will be roughly 75 minutes. As you can see, I am introducing, and then we'll follow in this order. We have our president. Well, I will introduce each person, so I don't want to be redundant. So why don't I start right away by introducing Charles Shemy. If you'll just give me one moment. So Charles,
oh, sorry.
Excuse me. Yes. So Charles is the president of the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue in Montreal. He is born in Iraq. He moved to Montreal. He actually escaped to Montreal at the age of 5 in 1965. He is a certified professional accountant, chartered accountant from McGill University, and he operates his own full-service accounting firm in Montreal. He's married to Lucy Gurgi, and they have 2 lovely children, Michael and Sophie. So Charles, if you would like to just say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, David. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this great, very important seminar. My name is Charles Shemy. I am the president of the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue. And I would like to thank, first of all of the organizers. There's Lisette Shashua, Gladys Dawood, Lynn Julius, and of course, David Nathaniel. I'm sure it was very difficult to put this together, and a lot of time was spent. And I'm very proud that Montreal is hosting this very important event. As you know, I think that Farhoud, I know what I know of it. It's was an important event in Jewish history. It happened in Shavuot in 1941. And many people would refer to it as part of the Holocaust. There were at least 180, maybe 800 Jews killed. 1,000 Jews were injured, and there was up to 900 Jewish homes were destroyed. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the panelists. We have a great lineup of panelists, and I'm very excited to hear about it. So that's all I have to say for now, and let's start the commemoration.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much. I also failed to also say at the beginning, while I did acknowledge our co-sponsors, I didn't talk about our sponsors. So the the work was done primarily by Lynn Julius, Lisette Sheshua, and Gladys Daoud, and we'll have a chance to meet everybody today. I'd like to thank the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of Montreal, and I'd like to thank Harif for their participation in sponsoring this event. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Lynn Julius. She is the daughter of Jewish refugees from Iraq. She is a journalist, blogger, and founder of Harif, the UK Association, just one moment, the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa, an organization dedicated to educating about the history and culture of MENA Jews. Her work has appeared in The Guardian, Huffington Post, Jewish News, Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, JNS News, and more. Her book, Uprooted, How 3,000 Years of Jewish Civilization in the Arab World Vanished Overnight, was published in 2018 and has been translated into several languages. So Lynn, we look forward to hearing from you now.
Well, thank you very much, David, and a big thank you to you for everything you have done in organizing this event today. So I'm just going to share my screen and take you for a very quick run through of 2,600 years of history. The Jewish community of Iraq is the oldest Jewish diaspora. It goes back to the Babylonian exile in 586 BC, when King Nebuchadnezzar took the Jews as captive slaves from Jerusalem. There by the rivers of Babylon, they sat down and wept as they remembered Zion. Only 70 years later, the Persian King Cyrus decreed that the Jews could return to Jerusalem, but life was so good that many decided to stay there, and the community was in continuous residence in the land of the two rivers until about 50 years ago. And here you see the river Tigris that runs through Baghdad. You see the flat roofs that helped save those Jews who were escaping the rioters. And you can see the pontoon bridges across the Tigris. It was in Babylonia that Judaism was shaped as we practice it today. And the scholars of the pre-Islamic academies of Sura, Pumbedita, and Nehadea wrote the Babylonian Talmud. Whoops. Rabbi Hillel was born in Babylonia. The community had its ups and downs, and the Jews became subjugated dhimmis under Islam. But the Jews outlived the Medes and Persians, the Umayyads, Abbasids, Mongols, Arabs, and Ottoman Turks, right up until 1917, when the British defeated the Turks, who sided with the Germans in World War I. The British created the state of Iraq out of 3 Ottoman provinces. It was under the British that the Jews experienced their short golden age. During the 1920s, the finance minister was a Jew, Sir Sasson Heskel. This picture shows my two grandfathers with their handlebar moustaches, who were importing and exporting goods from India and Europe. Jews comprised 1/3 of Baghdad and were the single largest ethnic group. Here is a meeting of the Baghdad Chamber of Commerce in 1938. Of 18 members, 10 were Jews. Jews were also prominent writers, musicians, and singers. Iraq became nominally independent in 1932. The king of Iraq, Faisal, died in 1933. But a massacre of 600 Assyrian Christians in the north of the country did not bode well for the minorities. Although Faisal had been a friend of the Jews, he had brought with him a group of fierce nationalists. Sati al-Husri was a Syrian who became Director General of the Ministry of Education in Iraq. From the late 1920s, fascist influence rose in Iraq, as did anti-Semitic sentiment. Jewish civil servants were dismissed, although later reinstated. Quotas on Jews in universities and the professions were introduced. Reuben Zaslani was a teacher in Baghdad. He was sent back to Palestine in 1935. He writes to a Muslim friend in the government that he detected a strong anti-Jewish movement. Even official circles are supporting it, he wrote. Many members of the Sunni governing elite had served in the Ottoman army alongside German officers and admired German militarism. Nationalist parties were established on the Nazi model, and pro-Nazi paramilitary youth groups, such as the Futuwa, attended the Hitlerjugend torchlight procession in Berlin in 1938. With Germany's eye on Iraq's vast oil reserves, the German ambassador, Dr. Fritz Grobber, who you see here extreme left, set up a network of spies and sympathizers in order to forge an anti-British alliance. He had Mein Kampf serialized in an Iraqi newspaper. By the end of the decade, the Nazis agreed to recognize the Arabs as honorary Aryans. The Mufti of Jerusalem, who is at the bottom of your screen, Haj Amin al-Husseini, arrived in Baghdad in 1939, together with 400 Syrian and Palestinians. The Mufti spent 2 years attempting to overthrow the pro-British government, inciting the local Muslims against the Jews, who were seen as collaborators with the British. After several failed attempts, the Mufti gave his backing to a pro-Nazi coup led by the nationalist Rashid Ali al-Gilani, the man with the glasses, and 4 army officers, forcing the pro-British regent into exile. It is said that Rashid Ali and his cohorts had plans to round up and exterminate the Jews of Iraq in concentration camps. The fanatical anti-Semite and self-styled governor of Baghdad, Yunus al-Sabawi, summoned Rabbi Sasson Kaduri to tell the Jews to lock themselves in their homes and prepare enough food for 3 days. Was this so they could be rounded up and sent to desert camps? It took just 30 days for the British to topple the Nazi government and put to flight the Mufti and his acolytes. They fled to Iran and ended up in Berlin as guests of Hitler. But the damage had been done. On the 1st of June 1941, a group of Jews who'd been locked in their homes ventured out in their Shavuot best suits to greet the returning regent. As they stood at the bridge over the Tigris, the Farhoud started. A mob of defeated Iraqi soldiers and pro-Nazis, including some police, later joined by Bedouins in search of loot, began to pull Jews out of buses and killing them. Was the Farhoud premeditated? It was. The paramilitary youth group, the Futuwa, had gone around daubing a red handprint on the Jewish homes, and the riot began in the old Jewish quarter on the left bank of the Tigris. Why did the British not intervene? The staff of the British embassy could hear the screams and gunshots coming from across the river, but the British army was under orders to intervene until on the second day, the mob began to attack Muslim quarters. The British army was encamped 8 miles from Baghdad, but did not enter the city. They did not want to be seen to be reoccupying the country. Once the orders had been given, however, the riot was put down very quickly by midday on the 2nd of June. And we know that the ambassador, the British ambassador, knew full well what was going on across the river because of this report here from an embassy dinner guest. And in fact, Cornwallis, the ambassador, said to Somerset, the chair, that 2,000 people, mostly Jews, were believed to have been killed in one night's looting. And this is the loaf-shaped grave in which the dead bodies were collected and buried. Although prosperity did return to the Jews of Iraq in the years following the Farhoud, they had received a terrible shock. Members of the intelligentsia defended Rashid Ali. No writers mentioned the Farhoud, while popular songs celebrated it. When Israel was declared in 1948, the Iraqi government began to persecute the Jews of Iraq. The fear returned of a second Farhoud breaking out. This, more than anything else, caused the Jews of Iraq to flee. Most moved to Israel in 1951. And this is a copy of a laissez-passer that was issued to emigrating Jews. It had this stamp which said, "One way, no return." So the Jews were effectively being expelled. Other Farhoods followed in other Arab countries, resulting in the flight of their Jewish communities. Was it a Holocaust event or just another pogrom, as broke out sporadically against the Jews? It was something new, a toxic brew of anti-Semitism inspired by Nazism, imported into the Arab world from Europe. More Jews died than on Kristallnacht, yet the Farhoud has not become part of Holocaust memory. The wartime mufti's anti-Semitism is still with us in the form of the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, born in the Nazi era, Gaza branch, Hamas. We have had echoes of the Farhoud in recent weeks. Mob violence is once again an instrument of political coercion. Only by commemorating these dark historical events can we light the way to a better future. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Lynn. That was really excellent. And now I would like to introduce Ephraim Satka. Ephraim is the chairman of the Babylonian Jewish Heritage Center. He's the chairman executive of the board at the Pinchas Sapir Center for Development, a professor at Tel Aviv University, and a board member of a variety of organizations. Dr. Satka received an undergraduate degree from Tel Aviv University and a doctorate from MIT. Welcome, Professor Satka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In fact, in a couple of days, we at the center, we are also holding an event commemorating the Farhoud. We do it every year. And we also have an exhibition, a permanent exhibition in the center devoted to the Farhoud. In fact, this is the only exhibition that was partially financed by non-Iraqis. It was financed in part by the Jewish Claims Organization because, as Lynn said before, the Farhoud was instigated by German influence, especially by the German ambassador to Iraq. For years, we know that the Farhoud indeed was a turning point, sort of the watershed line that showed the Jews where to go. They realized that Iraq is no longer their country, it's no longer their homeland. Then after that, the Jews started to have the underground, initially in order to protect the Jews, just to provide security to the Jews. But later on, it became a Jewish and a Zionist movement that helped smuggle Jews into Israel. So smuggle them and then help the Tasqit. And we tried to do as much as we could to make this Farhoud known to everyone in Israel. And it's not known. It is really not known. Just to give you an example, as I said, every year we hold an event devoted or commemorating the Farhoud. About a couple of years ago, we asked a public NGO, non-government organization, for some financial support. The answer we got from them is, I mean, we did not get the support. And the answer that we get, the reason, they told us, we do not support private memorial services. This is an answer that we got from a well-known organization inside Israel. So we really have a lot to do in order to teach people in Israel and everywhere about the Farhoud. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ephraim. I hope to come see you in Israel one day.
Well, if I may add, you know, this event can be seen on our FES web tomorrow at 6 o'clock Israeli time, so it's about 11 o'clock in the morning, Montreal time.
Super, thank you. So now I have the honor of introducing Irwin Cotler. So the Honorable Irwin Cotler is the founder and chair of the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, an emeritus professor of law at McGill University, former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, and an international human rights lawyer. Through his career, Irwin Cotler has demonstrated strong leadership in the fight against racism, anti-Semitism, and hate. He has also acquired vast experience in justice and human rights. Between 1999 and 2015, Irwin Cotler served as Member of Parliament for the riding of Mount Royal. As Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada from 2003 to 2006, he launched Canada's first national justice initiative against racism and hate, and initiated the first ever prosecution for the genocide of the Tutsis in Rwanda under Canada's Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act. He also helped make the Supreme Court of Canada the world's most gender representative Supreme Court, appointed the first ever Indigenous and visible minority justices to the Ontario Court of Appeal, and led adoption of the Civil Marriage Act. Mr. Cotler is an internationally recognized scholar and human rights advocate. As a constitutional and comparative legal specialist, he has published numerous seminal legal articles and has intervened in landmark Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom cases on free speech, freedom of religion, minority rights, peace law, and war crimes. He was chair of the International Commission of Inquiry into the fate and whereabouts of Raoul Wallenberg, member of the Organization of American States Independent Panel of Legal Experts on Venezuela, and is presently the Canadian member of the high-level panel of legal experts on media freedom. Irwin Cotler is a Privy Councillor, an officer of the Order of Canada, an officer of the National Order of Quebec, and a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. Mr. Cotler is a recipient of 14 honorary doctorates and numerous awards from institutions in Canada and around the world. Most recently, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau selected Mr. Cotler to be his special envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. So welcome, Mr. Cotler. We're pleased to have you. Hold on, just a little technical detail here. Let me see. One moment. Okay. Mr. Cotler, you can now unmute yourself and
okay, I'm okay now, but I wasn't able to be connected, so thank you. And I want to thank you, David, for that very effusive and humbling and unnecessary introduction. If I could have somehow abbreviated it, I would have been delighted to do so. Kvod HaRabbanim, Shal friends. May I begin by commending Gladys, Lisette, Charles, David, all those associated with the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue for convening this timely and significant moment of remembrance and reminder. On the 80th anniversary of the Farhoud, which in Arabic is translated in English into violent dispossession, but where I will be using the word pogrom in its most violent sense to characterize it. Indeed, we meet not only at a historic moment of remembrance and reminder, not only at an important moment of bearing witness, and I very much regret that for technical reasons I wasn't able to access Lynn Julius's presentations and those that went before, because she has always given compelling witness testimony. But we meet at a time when this 80th anniversary of the Farhoud has contemporary consequences for the whole struggle for justice for Jews from Arab lands, as well as the struggle against contemporary anti-Semitism today, and where the pursuit of justice, both for justice for Jewish refugees from Arab lands and combating the global anti-Semitism, converge, as I will try to share in my remarks. In a word, the organizing theme of my remarks is to ask the question, 80 years later, what have we learned? And more importantly, what must we do? First, the Farhoud, the pogrom targeting the Jews of Baghdad and Basra, was not only a brutal attack that took place on Shavuot, which resulted in the murdering of hundreds of Jews, of the wounding of thousands of Jews, of the pillaging of over 1,500 Jewish homes, of rape of Jewish women, which I even hesitate to even mention. But it was an assault on the oldest, most ancient and indigenous Jewish community, variously named Babylonia, Mesopotamia, and Iraq, where Jews lived for 2,500 years, a community of incredible learning and scholarship, where the Jewish academies in Sur and Pumbedita gave us the Babylonian Talmud, and which bequeathed to us a Jewish heritage and a Jewish tradition that underpins Jewish life to our day. And might I add, parenthetically, but not unimportantly, the Jewish archives of Iraq, which are now, and were rescued and now in the possession in the US, should not be returned to the place where the plundering began. Second, the Farhoud pogrom is remembrance and reminder of the targeting of Jews and Jewish life in Arab countries at the time, but as it became also the targeting of European Jews at the same time in the 40s, and where, as I said, the fate of both converged in the Farhoud. For Jews had not only lived in Iraq for 2,500 years, but they had, in fact, engaged in leadership positions in the Iraq government. They had fought for Iraq's independence in the 20th century. Iraq's first minister of finance was a Jew, and I can go on. But 2 months before the Farhoud, a pro-Nazi coup d'etat organized by the former Iraqi Prime Minister Rashid Ali al-Ilani overthrew the pro-British UK government, and in effect, aided and abetted by the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, resulted in an incendiary propaganda and targeting of the Jews that triggered the Farhoud. Just as Hamas's incendiary incitement ignited not only the recent Hamas terrorist war against Israel, but sought also to incite and inflame Israeli Arabs and undermine Israeli-Arab coexistence. In a word, the explosive combination in Iraq of Arab nationalism in Iraq, of the German Nazi connection, of the connection with the Grand Mufti, of anti-Semitism at the time is mirrored today with respect to Hamas and Muslim radicalism, Iran in place of Germany, but the explosive anti-Semitism now as the explosive anti-Semitism took place in Iraq. Third, the Farhoud is a looking glass into the pain and plight of the forced and regrettably forgotten exodus of Iraqi Jews and Jewish refugees from Arab lands, in particular between 1948 and 1951. It is, in a word, a looking glass into a state-orchestrated policy in Arab lands at the time, which was really organized as part of and we discovered a collusive Arab League document to that effect, for a state-orchestrated policy of targeting the Jewish population and resulting in denationalization, displacement, dispossession, forced expulsion, illegal sequestration of property, arbitrary arrests, detention, torture in detentions, imprisonment, and the like, namely anti-Jewish pogroms for which the Farhoud is metaphor and message, which metastasized on the occasion of the Arab assault against the nascent Jewish state of Israel, and where we are seeing echoes of that kind of radical Islam today. Fourth, the pain and plight of this forced yet forgotten exodus. The truth of this historic injustice must be restored to the international peace and justice agenda from which it has been expunged and eclipsed these last 73 years. Fifth, the rights and remedies for refugee victim groups, such rights and remedies as are consecrated in international humanitarian law, including rights of remembrance, truth, justice, and redress, must now be invoked and acted upon. Indeed, this is long past to secure justice for Jewish refugees from Arab countries. Six, on the international level, and here too in the interests of justice and equity, the UN General Assembly must reference Jewish refugees from Arab countries as it continuously references Palestinian refugees in its annual resolutions. The UN Human Rights Council must address the issue of justice for Jewish refugees from Arab countries as it has never done, while it has yet again, just 2 days ago, passed a permanent resolution authorizing a permanent inquiry into alleged Israeli violations while making no reference at all to the Hamas terrorism and Hamas terrorist war of attrition for these last 20 years. The annual November 29th commemoration by the United Nations of an International Day of Solidarity with the people of Palestine must be translated into an International Day of Solidarity for two states, for two peoples, as the UN partition resolution originally intended 73 years ago. In other words, it's a tragedy to think that had the Arab and Palestinian leadership accepted the partition resolution 73 years ago, as the Jewish leadership did, we would today be celebrating the 73rd anniversary of two states for two peoples and avoided all the intense pain and suffering these past 73 years. Eighth, a bilateral Israeli-Palestinian negotiating process, which if it begins, we hope will presage a peace process, must factor in the case and cause of Jewish refugees from Arab countries as it addresses the case and cause of Palestinian refugees. And finally, the Farhoud and its anti-Semitic aftermath, just as it took place in Iraq at the time, with all the combustible and interactive dynamics that I mentioned, what we witnessed as well then, and what we are witnessing in the global, escalating, intensifying anti-Semitism, which, as I've described it elsewhere today, is without parallel or precedent since the end of the Second World War. But what is common to both is the mainstreaming, the normalization of that anti-Semitism in the political culture. And what we are witnessing today in this global intensifying anti-Semitism is not only the normalization of anti-Semitism in the political culture, but the absence of outrage. Just as we had at the time of the Farhoud, silence in the face of evil, reminding us that the surest way to ensure that evil will triumph in the world is for enough good people to do nothing. So we are witnessing today the absence of outrage on the occasion of the explosive global anti-Semitism, which is finding expression in our own country, in Canada, and where the absence of outrage must now be responded to with action on the part of our political leadership and civil society. Because as we've learned only too well, and as Elie Wiesel would remind us again and again, that indifference always means coming down on the side of the aggressor, not on the side of the victim. Indifference now will always mean coming down on the side of anti-Semitism and not on the side of those whose justice and case and cause, be it justice for Jews from Arab lands, be it the struggle against anti-Semitism today, that is part of the larger struggle for the pursuit of justice in our time. And that must be the message and metaphor coming out of Farhoud 80 years later for political leadership and civil society in our day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotler. Wow, that was very powerful. And we very much appreciated your perspective and everything that you shared with us. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Bea Lukowitz. Just one moment. Mr. Cotler, yeah, perfect. If you don't mind muting yourself, that'd be great. So now we have Dr. Bea Lukowitz. She is a social anthropologist, oral historian, and curator, and is a director and co-founder of two oral history projects, the ARG Refugee Voices and Sephardi Voices UK Archive. She has overseen the overall development of both archives and has served as consultant for training and best practice on many other oral history projects. Her research interests include trauma and memory, diasporas and displacement, and nationalism and ethnicity. Among her publications are The Jewish Community of Salonika, History, Memory, Identity, and Immigrant Voices, Conversations with Jewish Refugees from Germany and Austria. This is forthcoming in 2021. Bea, would like to introduce you to say a few words, and then there's a video that has been put together by Sephardi Voices in the UK, along with participation from Sephardi Voices in the US. And we're very excited to show that to you. I think it brings a lot of the words that we've heard prior to this into perspective. So with all further ado, Bea, please come on.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm grateful to Harif and to the Spanish-Portuguese Synagogue of Montreal for having put this event together. It's my honor to be here with you today on the very important occasion of the 80th anniversary of the Farhoud, the violent pogrom carried out against the Jews in Baghdad in June 1941. This event has received very little attention, as we heard before, in history books, and only very recently has it been contextualized within the wider field of the Holocaust. Because so little is known about the Farhoud, the testimonies of the survivors are of utmost importance, and we should collect the testimonies as long as we can. When the discipline of oral history was developed, its explicit aim was to document undocumented history, and there could not be a better example of the importance of this endeavor than the Farhoud. By listening to the witnesses of the events of the 1st and 2nd of June 1941, we become witnesses and we can continue to tell their story. I'm very pleased that we can share with you some first-hand accounts recorded by Sephardi Voices UK and USA, and some footage from personal archives. And I'd like to thank my colleague Daisy Aboudi for putting this film together for this important occasion. I remember my interviews with Ivy Shashua, Aida Hakim, Julian Sofer, and Yeheskel Kodjeman very vividly. All of them described the events of June 1941 in great detail in their interviews. The oldest interviewee, Yeheskel Kodjeman, was 21 at the time of the Farhoud. The youngest, Ivy Shashua, was only 8 years old. Julian Sofer was 17 and Aida Hakim, 12. Ivy's family fled to Iran and Julian's family emigrated to India in the same year. Yeheskel, as many other young Jews, joined the Communist Party following the Farhoud and later spent 16 years in an Iraqi prison. The interviewees described the looting and the violence they witnessed. They also described the Muslim neighbors who protected them. Julian Sofer talks about a school friend who was surrounded by a mob and later murdered. He also talks about the silence which he listened to, followed by shrieks and noises, assumingly of celebration. Ivy recalls being huddled together in fear with her family in a hut in the back of her house. I think that these strong, very tangible memories illuminate the historical importance of the Farhoud for the Iraqi Jewish community as a whole, but they also underline the huge traumatic impact this experience had on individual lives. It is high time that these testimonies, such as the ones we are featuring here today, will be represented in the classroom, in museums, and in new digital spaces. We need to ensure that their stories are not forgotten. And sadly, in today's world, with the recent rise in anti-Semitic attacks, this seems to be more relevant than ever before. Thank you. And now we will screen the film.
Few days before the Farhoud, actually, I saw a Khamsa, somebody put like their hand with red on our door. And I asked my mother, what is that? So she said, well, maybe somebody just made a mistake or they think that there were Jewish people or something. But they were actually mentioning all the Jewish homes a few days before the Farhoud because they were planning for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I remember we left Baghdad a day before the Farhoud. We were so scared. We left at night, and a sheikh was with us to protect us. We took the train. The train was full of soldiers. There were no civilian at all. We were the only civilian, and we were all so scared. And before reaching Khanaqin, We saw Rashid Ali and Gilani and Mufti, they were escaping. We saw them in the car. Baba said, oh, here they are. I didn't know. So then once we got to Kermashan, there was only one hotel there. We stayed there and we saw all three of them there. They were having breakfast and dinner with us in the same area. And after that, we went to Iran.
We had a cook, and my mother sent him to the shops. We didn't know there is anything wrong. To the shops to get something, to buy something. He came home, and he told my mother, "What can I tell you? They are trying the Jewish houses. They break in, they rape the girls, or they kill them, and they take their furniture." And we were in the list, they gave our house, our address. So immediately, we didn't have telephone or anything. My father and my mother and we three children, we went to my aunt.
The first day in the morning, somebody came in the morning, early in the morning. He's the cook of my auntie. Mm. And his face was pale and he was shivering. And he said, I was at the bus. They stopped the bus and they said, all the Jews get out. So they came to him. He's very fair. He didn't look Jewish. He's very fair. They got him out. He said, are you Jewish? He said, I'm Christian. Mm-hmm. They let him go. And he was very lucky. He came over to us. We told him, stay with us. Stay with us, have a rest. We're going to give him a drink, something to eat. After some time, he said, I have to go back to my job. I am the cook.
And unfortunately, on June the 1st, 1941, we suddenly heard people shouting and yelling and outside our houses. We had a tree, nakhla, at the beginning of the house, and I climbed the tree, and so it's about 15 feet high, and I was hiding in between to see what's happening outside. And I saw a lot of men with swords in their hands, with rifles and what kind of things, and they're shouting, "Aqtal al-Yahud, itbah al-Yahud," kill the Jews, kill the Jews. And I was saying to myself, what the hell did I do at 9 years old that they want to come kill me?
It was time near Shavuot. 7 o'clock in the morning, the milk woman, she used to bring the milk every morning. She came to the back door and she told my mother, let everybody stays in today. She said, why? She said, I don't know, but it's better to stay in. Don't let anybody go out of the house. Half an hour later, she came and she said, come with me. All of you, come with me.
My biggest brother was in an area where they came, and he kept his wife and his children in one room. And when they came, he told them the money is there, the clothes are there, but don't touch the. So they said he's a national one, and only stole everything. He did not. They did not leave him a trousers, but they did not kill the children.
Went and sheltered with our next door neighbor, who was my first cousin, and the looters were passing by. Yeah. And he said, if they turn up and assault my cousins, I'd rather shoot my cousins than lose the honor.
We were still in our pajamas, before breakfast, before anything. We followed her. She took us to her hut, a small room half the size of this room, mostly bedding. By the time we closed the back door, the front door was broken down. And the mob came in. We didn't see them, luckily. We could hear the noise, the bullets. We closed the door and we sat there. She told us nobody to speak. We could hear bullets. We could hear screaming. We didn't know what was happening. Our parents didn't even, they said to us not to speak, put their fingers on their mouth. We stayed there from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5:30 in the evening. No food, no water, hot. Worst of all, no toilets.
My aunt, they are very rich. They have a very big house. They are in the corner of one street. The other corner, a Muslim solicitor or something like that. But they are in very good terms with him. They sent someone to ask the Muslim solicitor if we can come, and they are not a family of 5. We are about 30 people. They said no problem, come all of it. So we went to this Muslim, and they were, I do still remember the woman asking go and bring yogurt for the children, go and bring coffee, milk, whatever, you know. They were very helpful.
But what I saw is our landlord, who was our next door neighbor, at the time he wore a green hat, let's call it, because he was a Haji. And I saw that he had a chair in front of our house. And when the whole mob came in, they stopped right in front of him. And they were talking to him. But of course, I couldn't hear what they said. I only found out later that when they came, they wanted to go into our house. He told them that there was a woman with 9, she's a widow, with 9 children, and she asked for his protection. If they want to go and get them, they have to kill him first. So we were saved by this Muslim Haji. Thank God there were some good people like that. Then they went to our neighbors, and I can hear the screams of women being raped, mutilated.
Apparently, there was one army fellow who used to buy, who finished his bullet, used to buy every bullet for 1 dinar. Dinar was a pound then, to kill Jews, if there are any Jews. And he used to say, there were nearly 17 Jewish people in this house. Where are they? Was looking for us. And she said to him, they went in the morning, early morning, they went to the other friend. Her aim was, if we had anything buried or anything hidden, to find out before we were killed. Because at the end of the evening, at lunchtime, she came, pulled a drawer, and got a saber, a big, long knife, put it in her belt. And my father asked her, Jamila, you will want to sleep in the evening. Where will you put us? He said, we will be digging a big hole. We put you in it and we'll cover you till the morning. And then you come back to the hut. I think my parents understood what's going to happen. By then, we will be killed and we'll be buried in that hole.
We thought, fine, the British are coming. We're going to be all right. I was standing outside my house, and immediately next to us, my neighbor, there was another school boy friend of mine. And I said, let us go for a walk. At that time, another Jewish fellow student came along, said, don't go out. They've started killing Jews. Okay? Now, it so happened that as he walked towards the end of the street, I saw that he was surrounded by other people. Later, I learned that he was murdered. And that was the night when, how can I describe it to you? There was a lot of, sometimes a period of eerily silence, I suppose, when the marauders were surrounding Jewish people. And then there would be a huge hysterical cry, presumably when a crime was committed. And there was a lot of shrieking and screaming that went on right through the night.
Then after what they did to our neighbors, they set the houses on fire. And that went all night. I don't know if they were alive, but all we know, because what they did is if they saw a radio, they took it. If they saw something interesting, they took furniture and things like that, and then they set the house on fire. But again, all night, like you heard people screaming and yelling, crying, and you couldn't do anything. There were some people we saw them jumping from house to house, running away. And we were saved from that whole street. We were the only one who were saved, actually, really.
A friend of my father who was in the army, his name was Qasim. He was looking for my father. He knew about the pogrom. He was looking for my father. He kept on ringing, but of course the phone was taken, was cut. So he came in this fellow's car to look for us. What he found, the house was empty, literally empty. Even the windows were taken out. The doors were taken out. The banisters were taken out. And there were only papers in the house. And our cat, we used to have a cat, she was meowing all the time. And there was no sign of life at all.
I was in my brother's house during the celebration, and I had to go back to home, and my brother advised me not to go in the new street, but I go in the old street called Rashid. All those who went back from the new street called Ghazi Street were killed. They used to stop all the buses and see who is Jew, and they kill him. And I and one of my relatives went by foot all the street, all the street, and we arrived safely.
So we took a carriage, and I sat in my father's lap, and all the time he used to put his hand on my eyes so that I don't see what is in the street, especially Shara al-Rashid. Either blood on the ground or the stores were looted and broken. So there was a sort of a chaos everywhere, and police was here and there. Yeah. So finally we arrived at our home, and first thing, the door was broken. There was they broke the lock of the door and went inside. When we went inside, the house was simply empty. There was nothing. They took all the furniture, all the food. All what is left is some grains of rice on the floor.
So he asked the people, where are these people who lived in this house? He pulled his gun and he said, I will shoot you if you don't tell me. He said to him, I know where they are and I will take you to them. So he came in these little narrow alleyways, calling Saleh. But this woman, Jamila, told us not to speak and not to make a noise, so that nobody would know that we were there. We didn't answer. Saleh, Saleh, Saleh. At the end, he came and he said, Saleh, I am Qasim. So we came out. He took us to this car. We couldn't fit, so many of us. Who do you leave behind? Those are left behind will be killed. In those days, the car used to have a platform. And then you open the door. So they stood on the platform, put their hand around the windows, and we all fitted in.
So my father said, I'm going to bring some food. So where we go, where to sit? We found a newspaper. My mother put it on the floor, and my brother slept on that. And then my father went to bring something. He came back. He bought just a few pieces of cheese, some dates, one pita, and he said, everything is closed. There is nowhere to get things. And he went to the stores to buy some dishes. He could get only one dish and two knives.
Oh
And
God.
I still keep one of the knives as a souvenir till today. The next day, my father took us to get the passport renewed, and he took us immediatly. After a few days, he took us out. We went to my brother in Iran. I registered in an American school for a year and a half, and then we went to India.
Well, actually, after the Farhoud, all the young Jews, almost all of them, became political. There were two movements, political movements. One is the communist, and one is Zionist. And many people went to the Zionist movement, and many went to the communist. And you have sometimes in the family, one brother is Zionist, the other is communist.
I joined the Makhtarat only later when I was 16 years old, because we figured at the time we're not going to have that again happening to us as the Farhoud, because if another time is going to happen, we're going to have to be ready, because we were not ready in 1941. We thought everything was good. We are Iraqis, we are citizens. There is a police that will protect us. But that was not so. And so this is really one infamous day that I shall never forget.
You felt you are a second-class citizen. You felt you are Jewish and you are not wanted. You are taken advantage of. My sibling, we all felt the same thing. I mean, it gave us a shock. It gave us an outlook on life that we have to hide. We were not proud to be Jewish.
Well, thank you very much, Bea and Daisy. That was really touching, and to hear it from actual witnesses is extremely powerful. and meaningful. So now I would like to introduce Yvonne Green. Yvonne Green's a prize-winning poet born in London, England. She descended from 2,800-year Central Asian Jewish presence in modern-day Uzbekistan. Harif commissioned her in 2016 to research for and write this poem in commemoration of the Farhoud's 75th anniversary. Over the years, she's been invited to read this poem in the Knesset, London, England's Lauderdale Road, and Sydney, Australia's Sephardi synagogues, and at Shavuot educational events. I've heard your poem in the past, Yvonne, and I think that this will be a real treat for everybody. It's a very deep and meaningful poem. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you, David. The Farhoud. We walked on Shabbat in the Bustan al-Khas, lettuce orchards, on the east bank of the Dijla, the Tigris, or in Al Sa'adun, built to look like Hyde Park. Watch us, work, prosper, plod, tread the middle ground. During 2,000 years, 2,500 years, during a 2,500-year sojourn with family, food, festivals. Listen to us, speak Aramaic, Gultu, then Gillit. You never learned our languages after you arrived. We wrote literatures preserved for you now in different geographies. Watch Britain's renegade Grand Mufti translate National Socialism into his promised land apartheid. Listen to the whispers that the Führer was born in an Egyptian village. Watch him and hundreds of Palestinian and Syrian intellectuals in exile train soldiers, police, militiamen, and children. Watch nothing stops the Golden Square generals, even once their leaders, temporal and spiritual, run away from the British, for whose oil-fueled infantry 8 kilometers was further than the walk from Ambassador Cornwallis's dinner plate to his card table. Look, there's a man in a dark suit at the Maqbara who'll later press his cheek and arms up against a semi-cylindrical grave where 180 Farhoud dead are buried. This is not the only tomb. They were not the only dead. But go back before the Omer. Watch us tremble as we asked, Menengitem, that Erev Pesach, after the lawyer Rashid al-Gailani's coup turned the Hillek bitter. Watch our hopes surge when within the month he and the Grand Mufti escape from the British to Iran, plummet when Yunus al-Sabawi declares himself Governor General and orders us penned into our homes. Soar again when it's he who's deported within the day. Hear us attest to our treble terror reprieved when we eat our tabit on the Shabbat, which runs into Tikkun Leil, and hear Regent Abd al-Ilah's due back the next day, Sunday, June the 1st. Watch us cheer him home on the first day of Eid al-Ziyara. Then watch soldiers, police, civilians attack us on Al-Qur Bridge, at Al-Rusafa, Abu Siffin, everywhere, until 3 a.m. and silence. Watch at 6 a.m. on the second day of Chag, when they start again, not just the poor from Al-Kark, who cross the river empty-handed, then load up, having cruelly sacked our homes, shops, synagogues, but from everywhere they yelp, Itbahu el Yahud, butcher the Jews, drilled by Salah ad-Din al-Sabag, or by centuries of knowing our place, keeping the rules, paying the price, being no guarantee of protection. They cut up Jewish babies and threw them into the undertow. No Moses survived. They raped girls and old women, cut their breasts. No Dina survived. They beheaded and severed, taunted and tore, dragged Jews from buses which they used to run them over, every attack intended to humiliate. The dead, hurt, stolen, destroyed, uncountable, even once the regent called in the cut that felled the Saturnine mob. Where was the natural, civil, military Sharia law? The assumed duty to dhimmi. In the stand taken by Muslims like Dr. Saib Shaukat, Dean of Baghdad's Medical College, in the acts of landlords who risked their lives to save those whose houses the Hitler Youth styled Futua had painted with red khamsas. In the arms of neighbors who caught children in blankets when they were thrown to safety, and sheltered families who jumped across flat roofs where Baghdad used to spend its summer nights. Yes, we fought back. We boiled siraj, sesame oil, and threw it from our shashnil, latticed balconies, where women unseen had watched their households' comings and goings. We used the bricks from our parapets. We had no guns. Few had iron fists. Since the funerals, our children remember with new knowledge, and their picnics of Bethlehem, Timan Ahmar, and Kahi never go south to Al-Kifl for the Shabuot pilgrimage, sing Shirit HaGvarim at its 7 way stations, or hear the tomb of Yechezkel cry for its Jews.
Wow. Yvonne, wow. Sorry, but that made me very emotional. Extremely powerful. And really want to thank you for sharing that. Wow. So moving along, I'd like to introduce David Bassoun. David Kheder Bassoun was born in Baghdad in 1949. In the early 1970s, David left Iraq to England, where he completed his postgraduate studies. He holds a Master of Science and PhD degrees in chemical engineering and an MBA. He moved to Israel in the mid-1990s. In the last decade, David developed an interest in the history and heritage of Jews from Arab lands, particularly Iraq. He published articles in the Arabic digital media and has many interviews related to the history of Iraqi Jews. David is the chairman of the Association of Jewish Academics from Iraq in Israel, which supports the publication of literary works, research on memoirs of the Jews of Iraq. He is also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center and Center for Organizations of Jews from Arab Countries. Welcome, David.
Thank you, David. I just want to say about the poem of Yvonne. Actually, it's unbelievable. It told the whole story. Every single detail is in that poem. What I wanted to say is about our role as the Association of Jewish Academics, and that we have published dozens of books, and many of them were memoirs of very well-known intellectuals of Iraq, and most of them have dedicated chapters about the Farhoud, about their memories, about the background. From Anwar Shaoud to Salman Darwish, Nassim Ridwan, Shmuel Mores, Akbar Moshe, Salim Fattal, and finally Nassim Qazzaz, who had one of the most documented books regarding the Farhoud in terms of documents and cuts from newspaper, as well as the last recent book about contemporary history of Iraqi Jews, where several chapters were dedicated to the events of the Farhoud and the background to it. In addition to that, I want to mention something from a personal point of view. My father was a well-known journalist who left Iraq in 1973. He brought with him a book by the historian Al-Husseini in this book about the 1941 coup d'etat. And as far as I am aware, it's the first time this information which contained in the book were available in Israel. The book contains the secret document of the investigative committee that the government made just after the Farhoud, called Investigative Committee on the Disturbances of the 1st and 2nd of June. In 1977, a book by Braham Tweina was published, which contained a lot of the information and background, plus what happened after the Farhoud, about the committees that were established to help all the orphans and all the people who were affected by the Farhoud. And in it also there are witnesses, including my father, who actually mentioned it in Hebrew and English about the this investigative committee, which in fact now we have a full copy of it in several books, in I think in Hebrew, in English, and in an Arabic. And it's a very important, because it's that document itself where the full story is being told, even taking into account that the government wanted to minimize the number of casualties and associate, of course, certain reasons for it from a political point of view. It's in that document, it's been mentioned, for example, that the Jews which were taken into hospital, they wanted to actually remove them from hospital, the mob. It's in that it was mentioned that Yunus al-Sabawi had told the chief rabbi on the 30th that the Jews should stay at home on the 30th and 31st of May and the 1st of June. And he prepared a fiery speech which were supposed to be attacking the Jews in their home, talking about the possible of annihilation, massacre at their home. But Yunus al-Sabawi was caught and he escaped basically to Iran. In that document also, it talks about the role of the police and the army and the all the pro-Nazi fatwa. And in that document itself, it ends by saying, despite the fact that we tried to gather a lot of information, the Jews after the Farhoud were under threat all the time by the police, by the army, not to come forward and talk about what happened to them or to their families and to the basically confiscation or the killing or the looting of properties. At the end of the document, it gives the in detail what they think they are the reasons for the disturbances, what they call the disturbances, and they gave basically 7 reasons with a full sorry, 6. The German consulate and its role, and Fritz Gruber, and the way they were bribing and giving money and using women to seduce army officers and so on. The role of the Mufti Haj Amin al-Husseini and his entourage, and in very detail what they did and what they how they basically were part of the actual anti-Jewish sentiment and anti-Jewish basically giving money to people. Talk about the Palestinian and the Syrian teachers of spreading anti-Jewish feelings. Talks about the German broadcasting Huna Berlin, Idaat Berlin in Arabic, which had all the time been, spreading information about Nazis and anti-Jewish. Talks about the Iraqi broadcasting, and finally about the Fituwa and the Youth Brigade and their role in the Farhoud. So that's in summary what I wanted to say. Of course, at any time, any one of you or anybody would like to dig deeper into all these things that I mentioned, can contact me and we can make the information available to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I'd like to now introduce Etta Uden. She's the Vice President of CIJA. It's a Quebec organization. As a national, nonpartisan, and not-for-profit organization, the Center for Israeli and Jewish Affairs, CIJA, is dedicated to improving the quality of life, of Jewish life, by promoting public policy interests and participating in social debates in the interest of all of Quebec and Canada. CIJA is the advocacy agent of Jewish federations across Canada and in Montreal for Federation CJA. CIJA fights anti-Semitism and all forms of discrimination, defends fundamental rights and freedoms, advocates for social justice, and encourages support for Israeli people. The organization combines the strength of a national network with regional representation efforts, and as an organization affiliated with the World Jewish Congress, international representation efforts. Etta has appeared as an expert witness before National Assembly commissions and has acted as a spokesperson for CIJA on Quebec and national media. She is a regular speaker to groups on a variety of issues and public policy concerns, anti-Semitism, as well as the history of Jews from Arab lands. And I can tell you, as a Montrealer, I've witnessed Etta has been very, very busy in the last few weeks with what's been going on. So Etta, please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, David. What an unbelievable program and panel that has been put together. So much of what needs to be said and needs to be shared has been said by those who spoke before me today, and so eloquently, Irwin, Cotler, and others. I have to take a minute to credit Lisette, Gladys, and Lynn, and David. I know how hard you have all worked to put this together. Listening to the video and the testimonials, it brought me back to a conference that we put together about 20 years ago with World Jewish Congress in Montreal. Lisette, I'm sure you remember when we were looking for Iraqi Jews and Jews who had experienced similar experiences in the Middle East to come forward and share their stories. And that was the first time I heard such detailed accounts of what happened during the Farhoud. And it really formed a lot of my convictions and opinions. As a CEJA, we have worked to secure awareness and amongst government, media, outside of the Jewish community of what the Jews of Iraq and others have experienced and have gone through. In 2014, the Canadian government recognized the experience officially of the exodus of Jews from the Middle East. And I'm proud to say that we've had a number of declarations at the Quebec National Assembly acknowledging this important date in our history. Personally, as a daughter of an Iraqi Jew, my grandfather was a member of the Ottoman Parliament and legal advisor to the Minister of Finance in Iraq. This story is so much more than one of the issues that I deal with. And I think as the next generation, as someone who wasn't born in Iraq, but who has those roots, it's incumbent upon us and every single one of us to do what we have to do to make sure that the world does not ignore what happened, that the world remembers our story. I know my own children have become fascinated and taken the mantle of researching and understanding our history. When Lisette reached out about this program, it was before so many incidents happened. And, you know, if I could just share a perspective, I had agreed to participate gladly in this amazing event, an important event, and also in other events, international events commemorating and standing together with the Jews of France after the judgment in the Sarah Halimi case. And for me, at that time, all these stories seemed so far away. The last few weeks in Montreal and Canada, around the world, what Jews have been experiencing, the level of anti-Semitism that we have seen cannot go unchallenged. It is the duty of all of us as we sit and we remember the history and we remember what happened. We've learned our lesson and we will not accept anti-Semitism to fester and take root in our communities. The National Assembly of Quebec adopted unanimously a motion last week condemning the anti-Semitic violence and events that have been taking place in Montreal. And I think the fact that this telling of stories and testimonials of a history that has been so barely documented and acknowledged is vital. And the work that all of you are doing is vital in this journey that we have as a Jewish people to fight anti-Semitism, to push it back wherever it appears, and to ensure that Jewish communities around the world are safe and protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Etta. That was lovely. So now I would like to introduce Shimon Samuels. Shimon is born in England with degrees in international relations from Hebrew University in Jerusalem, the London School of Economics, Keio University in Tokyo, and the University of Pennsylvania. Shimon is the Director for International Relations at the Simon Wiesenthal Center based in Paris. He is responsible for issues of contemporary racism and anti-Semitism in Europe, Latin America, and international organizations. Welcome, Shimon.
Thank you, David. It's a wonderful program, and after so much passion, it's very difficult to follow. However, I would like to come back to, I think Irwin approached it, and that is how the current wave of anti-Semitic violence against Jewish communities across Europe and now North America represents the early features of the Farhoud. If I could say that the Rashid Alis of the day are Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, festering anti-Semitic jihadi terrorism began targeting Jews in the 80s. And I was present at the PFLP bombing of the Copernic Synagogue in Paris. And that launched 72 other massacres over the decade. And then in the 90s, the bombing of the Amir Jewish Center in Buenos Aires, organized by Iran. The 20th century, and here I think that this brought the transplantation of the Middle East Intifada across Western Europe. Globalization of Jew hatred arrived with the 2001 United Nations World Conference Against Terrorism in Durban, South Africa. Irwin was present there. I was the only Jew elected to the International Steering Committee and was unceremoniously expelled on arrival in Durban. That was, in fact, a frightening event. It closed with the siege of the Durban synagogue by pro-Palestinians brandishing banners stating Hitler did not finish the job. There was a Durban 2 and a Durban 3, and they were both opened by Iranian President Ahmadinejad, spewing Judeophobia. In the hand of Iran today is the contemporary version of Nazi Germany. A Durban 4 meeting is now being planned for September at the UN headquarters in New York. I'm very happy that Canada, together with Australia and the United States, have announced their boycott, and anything that can be done to get other countries to quit this exercise in hate would be very welcome. I'd like to just also say that reminding the 1938 Evian Conference on European Jewish Refugees under the League of Nations, the forebear of the UN, was a farce of 32 ambassadors explaining why their countries would not accept Jews. Only the Dominican Republic gave safe haven to some 5,000. And this was before the Farhoud, and it showed from the 30s on the danger. And today, I would say that Evian is represented by the UN Human Rights Council, the UN General Assembly, the World Health Organization, and the International Criminal Court, whose obsessive, compulsive affronts to the Jewish state make them responsible for the current wave of a new intifada Farhoud. So High Commissioner, Directors General, Presidents, Rapporteurs, you've made one great big mistake. Your fomenting of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, Judeophobia will send waves of support and arrivals from the Jewish diaspora, non-Jewish friends, to strengthen the Jewish homeland. The days of Evian and the wandering Jew are over. Democratic member states will not give up their benefits from the startup nation. Those failed states of human wrongs agencies will continue to denigrate Israel among themselves in their own echo chambers. Our late mentor, Simon Wiesenthal, would say, what begins with the Jews never ends with them. France, with the largest Jewish and Muslim communities where my office is, will be the test for Europe. President Macron has called for a French Islam adhering to the values of the Republic. If this fails, The current victim of Saturday will be followed by the victim of Sunday, as also our friends among the people of Friday. That is our lesson from the Farhoud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shimon. I would like to now introduce Gail Adelson Markovitz. Gail is a community, Gail's community involvement began as, sorry, Shimon, could you turn your video off, please, and mute yourself? Thank you. Gail is a community, her community involvement, began as a youth leader for B'nai B'rith Youth Organization. As a young mother, she volunteered to drive the vulnerable with Omets and cook with Meals on Wheels at Federation CJA, which Gail, maybe when you come on, you could just explain who Federation CJA is, but it's the foremost Jewish organization, certainly in the city of Montreal, at the very least. At Federation CJA, she served as campaign chair for the Young Adults Division, co-chair of Pro-Montreal, and president of Women's Philanthropy from 2009 to 2012. She co-chaired the first Montreal Mega Mission to Israel in 2014 and the Centennial Celebrations in 2017. She is currently president of CJA. In her various leadership roles, she has focused on programs and initiatives that inspire, educate, and engage. Gail graduated from McGill University with a Bachelor's of Commerce and a Bachelor of Civil Law. She and her husband have 4 children, 1 grandchild, and who she has dubbed as her travel partners and biggest supporters. Welcome, Gail. Thank you for joining us. It's a great honor.
No, David, the honor is actually all mine. I have honestly learned so much today about an incredible period in our lives, and that I honestly knew a little bit about, but now appreciate so much more. And today, on the 80th anniversary of the anti-Jewish pogrom in Baghdad, Federation CJA wants you to know that we stand against injustice while we remember the many Iraqi Jews who lost their lives to the violence and the devastation of the Farhoud. It's particularly significant in light of recent events in Israel and the rising anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic violence and attacks around the globe in the last 2 weeks, that today we remember almost 1 million Jews who were forced out of their lands as refugees. Today we mourn the loss of an ancient and vibrant Jewish community that once was, and we are forever thankful for the safe haven that exists in Israel for all of us today. I want to thank all of you again today for the incredible speakers who taught me so much about this event. Federation CJA in Montreal is the umbrella organization that provides social services to the community and in particular to the vulnerable. And so the refugee the challenges of refugees who must leave their countries and find safe haven in other countries is one that is very important to us, and protect some force we protect. We will never forget the Farhoud and all of the incredible devastation that it caused. And again, I want to thank all of you for today's incredible memorial.
Thank you very much, Gail. I really appreciate again your participation and your very kind words. So now we're running late. I'm sorry, but it's been a wonderful program, and we're going to continue. I think it's going to be probably another 10 to 15 minutes. So right now I would like to invite Rabbi Joseph Dweck to give the closing remarks. Rabbi Dweck is American-born. He is the senior rabbi of the Spanish and Portuguese Sephardi community in the United Kingdom. As I mentioned, he is American-born. He has lived in LA and in Brooklyn. He studied in Jerusalem at the Yeshiva Hazon Ovadia under the tutelage of former Sephardi Chief Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. And Rabbi Dweck received his smicha from Rabbi Ovadia Yosef under the auspices of the Sephardic Rabbinical College of Brooklyn, New York. Rabbi Dweck served as rabbi of Congregation Shar Shalom, a Syrian Sephardi synagogue with over 700 members in Brooklyn, New York, from 1999 to 2014, and also served as the headmaster of the Bar Chai Yeshiva, a large Jewish day school in Brooklyn. In his capacity as senior rabbi, Rabbi Dweck has the honor of being the deputy president of the London School of Jewish Studies, a president of the Council of Christians and Jews, and religious authority of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. Rabbi Dweck also serves as a member of the Standing Committee of the Conference of European Rabbis. He currently resides in London with his wife, Margalit, and their 5 children. Welcome, Rabbi Dweck.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all those who have arranged this very important event for including me, giving me an opportunity to share some closing words. Friends, Will Durant said, "Barbarism is always around, amid and beneath civilization, ready to engulf it. Barbarism is like the jungle. It never admits defeat. It waits patiently for centuries to recover the territory it has lost." The barbarism that we speak of today is of the brand of anti-Semitism, and so it functions. For centuries, the Jews not only survived in Arab lands, they thrived. They didn't look into themselves. They lived amongst the society. They were involved in the daily life of the country. We participated in its commerce, its government, its arts, and its civic projects. Iraq particularly was one of the richest and most fertile areas of the world for the Jewish growth, scholarship, and creativity going back over 2,000 years, as we've heard this afternoon. The Jewish people are the repository of the nations of the world. Culture, music, words that are no longer spoken, heard, experienced in the places in which they began, still live in us, are spoken by us, are sung by us. Anti-Semitism, unfortunately, is something that is a ubiquitous part of our time on this earth. And we have been on this earth for some time. In an almost preternatural way, we have walked this earth, we have spoken every language, we have lived in every place, we have absorbed every culture in our national psyche. I am known to say, and I continue to say, if you have an opportunity to visit London, visit the British Museum. Every room in which you enter is a footnote to our history, whether it's Mesopotamia, Rome, Babylon, all of it we saw. This afternoon, we are remembering, mourning, 80 years later, one of the most harrowing events in recent Iraqi history. And it, unfortunately, as we're hearing even people here in the audience today say, I didn't know all of this. I didn't hear about this. I'm learning new things about this. I haven't heard the word Farhoud. It is absolutely essential that we not only raise the awareness, but that we place it properly in its rightful place in our Jewish history, not in our local Sephardi history, not in our families, but in the national history of our people. Because a memorial is not simply to remember the past and mourn it. It's to draw our strength from it and to look to our future, to our children, to where we are going. Unfortunately, in recent weeks, we've heard very similar rhetoric. As Will Durant said, it never goes away. It just lies dormant. that is just beneath the surface. Our responsibility in all of this, in the times that we remember our losses, our casualties, the deaths and murder of our people, we must also remember this. We should not be here, the Jewish people. We should be in the British Museum like everyone else. And yet, we visit it rather than presented as exhibits in it. We are an indestructible people. And we must instill in the hearts of our children and our grandchildren not only what it is that we lost, but to remind them what it is that we must be proud of. What are the great things about being Jewish? What are the beautiful things about our history, our culture? Who are we? How do we raise our head high, even as we hear them call for our destruction? A memorial is to give us strength, to look forward to the future and to rekindle the pride in who we are as a people. We have seen miracles happen before our eyes. We've seen the words of prophets come true in our very days. Let our hearts be filled with courage and hope, and may we prosper, and may God protect us and keep us and bring us life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rabbi. I'd just like to introduce, before we have Rabbi Pinto and Cantor Ben Lolo perform the Hashkabah, I'd just like to say thank you to Lynn, Julius, to Lizette Shashua, and Gladys Daoud. The four of us, the four musketeers, worked very hard to put this together, and I think it's been a great success. I'd like to just bring on Gladys and Lizette. Just a quick introduction. Gladys Daoud is based in Montreal. She's a bilingual graduate of McGill University and holds a master's and MBA. She leads the Aerospace Engineering Department internship program at the École Polytechnique and has led workshops in leadership, creativity, and performance evaluation and management. She's active in many organizations. Gladys, if you could just come on to say hello, that'd be wonderful. And then I'll introduce Lizette.
Hi, everybody. I'm really very proud to have worked on making today's program possible. I am very proud of the messages, the powerful messages that all of our panelists have delivered. And I see this as a work in progress that from here on, as Ita has mentioned, we have to continue working to protect from the anti-Semitism that is becoming very prevalent in the political discourse, and to point out the absence of outrage, as Irwin Cotler has so well put in perspective. There is no outrage for everything that happened in the past couple of weeks. So thank you. And anytime, David, you want to work on something, I'd be happy to work with you. I think you did a great job doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gladys. We made a great team. So now I'd just like to introduce Lizette Shashua. She was born in Iraq to a then wealthy family in 1948. She escaped Iraq via Kurdistan into Iran in 1970 on her own without her parents. She became a flight attendant with Air Canada and could fly all over the world except to Baghdad to see her parents, who by now could neither sell their own property nor have a telephone, only because they were Jewish. Ultimately, by some miracle, her parents were able to leave Iraq penniless before the Gulf War in May 1990, when they were finally reunited 20 years after Lizette's escape. She is now retired and has been active in telling the story of the Iraqi Jews who are direct descendants of the Jews brought by Nebuchadnezzar after the destruction of the first temple 2,700 years ago. This is where the Talmud Bavli was written, also where 14 Jewish prophets are buried, amongst them Seth, Daniel, and Job. Welcome, Lisette.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the privilege, David, you and Lynn, who gave us to work with you. It was such a pleasure. And yes, I'm very proud of the panel and everything that was done today. What bothered me a lot was during the war 2 weeks ago with Israel, we were even sent messages from Israel saying it's another Farhoud here. They are burning and lynching. I know they did lynch somebody to death, and they gave his organs to people a day later. And one of the people who was a recipient of the organs was an Arab. I think we do so many wonderful things in Israel that is not advertised enough. They are treating Hananiah's niece or wife or something in Israel. They're treating a lot of Arabs from Syria in Israel, and nobody sings their praises. I think this is something that we have to all work on, showing the world. I don't think we're doing a good, or at least Israel definitely is not doing a good PR job to have people, non-Jews, aware of how many good things we're doing. This is number one. Number two, somebody was asking why nobody talked about the Arab Jews in Israel. How come not too many people knew about it, if because Israel was formed by Ashkenazis? And I say yes. We have somebody here, I won't mention his name unless he wants to, he was on the panel, who did talk about his experience. When he went to Israel, he was a scholar. He tried to study. After being in Ma'bara and everything, he managed to get out and study and go to university, just to be scorned by the teachers as an Iraqi Jew, saying that he should be very grateful for the privilege he doesn't deserve of studying, and that the Jews from Arab lands are like cockroaches, and that they were brought only to work in the fields as peasants, and that he should be very grateful that he is allowed the privilege to continue his studies. I think that is just as bad as anti-Semitism. This is Jews insulting other Jews. And I think we have to start changing. I know it changed in Israel, obviously, but we have to do more PR for Israel, for the Jews, for making it. Why is it becoming politically correct to insult the Jews, to say death to the Jews, and you can't say anything against anybody else? You can't say, I don't like homosexuals, but I hate the Jews is very accepted now. And we have to change that rhetoric. Thank you very much. We just don't want another Farhoud, which seems to be happening all over the world. Thank you.
Lisette. Thank you very much. Appreciate your words. And so now, I'd like to just say a few things. I thought this was an excellent program. I learned a lot. I felt a lot. It was really touching. And, one thing I will say, I think as Jews, we look at our history. It guides us and it makes us who we are. But we live in the present, and we're always moving forward into the future. And I think it's a great attribute that we have, and that for sure will always continue. So thank you very much. We're going to close with again a hashkaba, And then when that is over, the commemoration will be over. We've had lots of questions in the Q&A. We've had lots of chats. I hope you've been able to follow them. On the Q&A, I've tried to answer some, but it's a bit multitasking. So what I will say is the recording, this webinar is being recorded, and we do have, for all of you who have registered, we have a way to contact you and share the link. It'll be on YouTube, so it'll be available. I'd like to also mention that Joe Samuels, who's in this is one of the attendees of this event, wrote an article that was published in the Wall Street Journal on the Farhoud. So if you Google Wall Street Journal, Joe Samuels or Farhoud, it should pop up. So now I'd like to just introduce Rabbi Pinto and Cantor Ben Lolo. Rabbi Maimon Pinto was born in Ashdod, Israel. His parents migrated to Montreal in 1986 with their 4 children. After successfully graduating from Talmudic studies and recognizing his communication abilities and his language skills, his rabbis encouraged him to pursue his rabbinical studies. He received his rabbinical ordination smicha from Kolel Or Yaakov in Rehovot, Israel, and an additional rabbinical certificate from the chief rabbi of Israel, Benjamin Lau. Rabbi Pinto's passion for Judaism and teaching made him a much beloved teacher and sought after speaker. Rabbi Pinto has been serving the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue in Montreal as our rabbi for the past 2 years. He lives in Montreal with his wife Gali and their 3 children, Menachem, Devorah, and Rivka. And Cantor Daniel Ben Lolo, sorry Danny, I'm sure you're laughing. Cantor Daniel Ben Lolo is the Chazan at the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue in Montreal. He's born in Casablanca, Morocco, and the youngest of 12 children. Chazan Ben Lolo and his family settled in Quebec, the cradle of Canadian Sephardia, in the early 1970s. He's a multi-talented artisan whose design, ketubot, and other beautiful Judaic art have been published in a variety of books and publications. His passion for singing and stage brought him to perform in several countries, including Venezuela, United Kingdom, Israel, South America, and the United States. Chazan Ben Lolo is a recipient of the 2017 Mayor City Builder Award, 2016 Sovereign Medals for Volunteers, Elaine Rabin Social Service Award, and many other awards. So with all further ado, Danny, Cantor Ben Lolo, and Rabbi Pinto, we look forward to your words and chashkaba.
Thank you. I just can't turn on the camera. David?
Yes.
Enable my camera?
Just 1 second. Let me take a look. I think it's on your side, but let me just see.
All right.
Let me take a look. It's your camera, Rabbi Pinto. Well, yes, you're not there. Okay, 1 second. I think we lost you as a. I have to find you. Give me 1 second, and we should have this fixed. Rabbi, where are you? No. Can you turn it on, Rabbi? The video? Oh, excellent. Okay.
Thank you, David. We are here at the sanctuary, and Mashal Sanctuary, and the Spanish and Portuguese, together with Chazan Ben Lolo. The current events in Israel and Montreal, myself, has some effect on myself and the Chazan as we were at the riot, at the rally a couple of weeks ago, when we closely experienced what terrorism and anti-Semitism could lead to. I was myself in a store for almost 2 hours before the Chag HaShavuot, the holiday of Shavuot, locked in the store while there were riots everywhere and tear gas and police in downtown Montreal. I was together with other people in the store that were frightened, shaken by everything that was going on. And I have to say that the fear was very present. It was palpable. We felt really the hate and the looks that we got walking down the streets. And when we eventually had to leave to make sure that we get to our proper destination, each one of us as we accompanied each other. This is in I'm not tending to in any way to compare this to what happened 80 years ago to the Farhoud. And we are deeply, me and the Khazan, we are deeply touched by all the testimonial and the stories that we heard from everyone here. We want to thank you, David, and everyone else and everybody that was involved in organizing this very important commemoration for those people that were prosecuted during the Farhoud. Our sages say in Pirkei Avot, just to reiterate what Rabbi Dweck and David mentioned, our sages say in Pirkei Avot, Da mi'ayin bata ve'le'an ata olech. Know where you come from and know where you go. There's a very simple understanding, but I also like to understand this as meaning that in order to know where we're going as we move forward, as David mentioned, moving forward is part of our Jewish history, resilience and rebuilding ourselves, reinventing ourselves over and over. But at the same time, while we move forward, we always have to look backwards and remember mi'ayin bata, where you come from, and celebrate our history and commemorate. Our history is full of, and our holidays are full of joy, and our times where we also mourn. And so we are here with you today, with no further ado, to share a time of prayer with you now as we will recite the Hashkavah. I will read the translation, and Khazan Ben Lolo will follow with the Avarachamim, a special prayer. If I could ask all those that can kindly rise as we start the Hashkavah and the prayer of Avarachamim. Father of compassion who dwells on high, in his powerful compassion, may he recall with compassion the devout, the upright, and the perfect ones, the holy congregations who gave their lives for the sanctifications of the name, who were beloved and pleasant in their lifetime, and their death were not parted from God. They were quicker than eagles and stronger than lions to do their Creator's will and their rock's desire. May our God remember them for good with the other righteous of the world, and let us say Amen. Khazan Ben Lolo.
Harachamim Shochen Merumim Berachamav Atzumim Hu yifkod berachamim Hasidim Vehayesharim Ateminim Kehilat HaKodesh Shemaseru Nafsham Al Kedushat Hashem Hane'ehavim Vehane'imim Bechayehem Uvotam Lo Nifradu Nisharim Kalu Me'areyot Gaveru La'asot Retzon Konam Vechefetz Tzuram Izekerem Elohenu Letova Im She'ar Tzadikei Olamim Ve'yinkom Le'enenu Nikmat Dam Avadav HaShafuch Kakatuv Betorat Moshe Isha Elohim Harninu Goim Amo Ki Dam Avadav Yikom ונקם ישיב לצרה וכיפר אדמתו עמו ועל ידי עבדיך נביאים כתוב לאמור וניקתי דמם לא ניקתי ואדוני שוכן בציון. ובכתבי הקודש נאמר, למה יאמרו הגויים, איה אלוהיהם יוודע בגויים לעינינו, נקמת דם עבדיך השפוך. ואומר כי דורש דמים אותם זכר לא שכח צעקת ענבים. ואומר ידין גויים מלא גוויות מחץ ראש על ארץ רבה. מנחל בדרך ישתה, על כן ירים ראש ונאמר אמן.
May be seated.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Pinto and Chazan Ben Lolo. And that now concludes the end of our commemoration. Thank you again to everyone who joined. We had over 350 participants. And I think this, for me, was a very, very special day and very meaningful. So thank you again. Wish you all the best of health and of success, and we say goodbye. Take care.